When I was born, my dad walked out on us. In fact, I later found out in life that my uncle went out looking in the bars, looking for my dad to tell him that he had a son. He never moved back home. So I was raised by my grandmother, my mother. I have an older sister. He was just not in my life. I desperately wanted him to say he was proud of me. I just wanted his approval. So when I was 8 years old, he asked me if I wanted to go with him on a fishing weekend. And man, I was thrilled. I thought, I'm gonna spend a man's weekend with my dad. I had never spent any more than an 8-hour period with him at any one given time up until that in 8 years. We drive down there and we walked in this cabin. There are pinups and pornography like wallpaper on the walls. My dad was looking at me. He said, "Well, I told you this was a man's cabin." And then I'll never forget, he said, "This is what men do." 8 years old, that's what started my addiction to pornography. I met my wife in my early 20s. My addiction to pornography was still there. And as one thing leads to another, and when one thing ceases to be good enough and you look for something else, I cheated on my wife. I committed adultery. I remember sitting in the basement of my house. Peg's upstairs, she's crying. I got nearly a 1-year-old son asleep, and the weight of it hit me. And I literally said out loud, "You've become your dad." The thing I said I would never do, the thing I would never become, the person I would never become, I had become him. Well, Peg said, "I'll work on the marriage. I'll stay with you, but if you want me to leave, I'll take Brent and we'll go." And that's not what I wanted. So I thought, well, let's just try. Let's just try and hold this together. A lady across the street from us, she saw our struggle, and she was going to Southeast Christian Church. She invited Peg to go with her on Sundays, and Peg started going, taking Brent. They would go to church, but I had nothing to do with it. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. In my opinion, church was for women and children and weak men. I thought, if there is a God, he doesn't care at all about me, and I really don't care about him. And around the beginning of 1985, my cousin got married, and it was this little church on Hikes Lane, never been there before. And I'm sitting in this church, and I'm looking at this pastor, I'm listening to him talk about Jesus. He talks like this guy, first of all, is real, and he speaks like he knows who he is, like he knows him. And I thought, this isn't some wimp, like this is a man. I leaned over to my wife, I said, if this guy had a church, I would go to his church. And she said, "This is Bob Russell, this is his church, this is where I've been coming." I started reading the Bible. I thought, this is really significant, but I don't know if I can believe it. I was a police officer at the time with Jefferson County Police Department. And I wasn't going to believe something just because a bunch of people said, "Oh yeah, this is true." If this is really true, there's got to be evidence out there that I can research, that I can make an informed decision. And I remember sitting on that same couch, like a year later, for the same couch I was on when I said, "You become your dad." It was like I just woke up. And I literally said, "This is true." For the first time in my life, on that day, on that couch, on that night, I realized that everything you've been doing doesn't work. And it leads to this. And I just began to weep. I just started crying. And I remember just telling Jesus, I want to follow you. And I just started praying for the first time really in my life. Well, I told my wife, she was there a long time before her husband. She's waiting for her knucklehead husband to catch up with her. And on December 29th, 1985, in one of the services at Southeast, Bob Russell baptized us both. I just wanted my dad to be proud of me. He never did tell me he was proud of me. Never in my entire life did my dad ever tell me, "I love you." Not once. What I didn't know was Jesus was there saying, "Yeah, but I've got a better way. Come over here. I've got a better way." So I know there has to be somebody, you're listening to me and you think, "Yeah, that's me." We want to know what's true. So I challenge you, will you look for that? Will you sincerely look for what is true? And then ask yourself this question: what do I really believe about myself, and who am I listening to? The messages you may have received from a dad, from a parent, from a mom, from somebody in your life that's telling you that you're not good enough, that's not God. So my encouragement is to discover what Jesus says about you and how does he feel about you, and live your life out of who you truly are, not of what you've been told your entire life. My dad's message to me was, you don't count, and you're not good enough, and you're not worth sticking around for. Jesus says you are enough. You're worth dying for. And you are worth sticking around. And I love you no matter what.